All right, guys, so I'm Ryan, and this is my EG build. I've been posting a good amount on my social media, kind of showing the process of this EG. I'm also kind of showing some of the problems that I've had with it, and I wanted to take a minute and kind of like run down some stuff, explain kind of what's going on with the car, and why I wasn't able to just start putting it together after I got it back from the paint shop. I want to just kind of start by saying that, this EG is something that's special to me. I really like them. I've always wanted one, and I picked one up in probably about 2 to 3 years ago. It was a clean car. One of my friends had owned it and actually sold it to a buddy, passed it on to his kid, and the kid did like a K-swap in the car and actually beat it up a good amount. So it was a clean car as far as I knew, but actually there was a lot of issues with it. There was a lot of damage on the car when I actually ended up buying it, realizing that it was almost like a hail damage car, just like little dents all over the thing. My goal was to get it painted, but I didn't want there to be a lot of Bondo on the car. So what I decided to do was get it PDR'd. So that's paintless dent removal. It's going to basically clean up the body, so there's very little minimal glazing or Bondo on the vehicle. You don't want Bondo. You want everything to be as straight as possible. You want your canvas to be clean before you start painting, right? So I ended up hiring a guy that was mobile. He was fair rate. It's a little expensive, but PDR is not cheap. And he actually came to my shop and he did a full PDR correction on the car. It was way straighter. I was really happy with it. It was expensive. I think ended up being all in after everything was all said and done. It was almost $2,000. So a lot of money, but I really wanted to invest in this car. This car is important to me. I want it right. Next thing I did was a recommendation from a friend was to get a painter to come over and to paint the car. I had him look at the car and, he went through it and he told me, what he saw and what it would maybe roughly cost. I told him what my budget was. My budget was about $10,000, and that's a lot of money, but I wanted a good quality paint job, and I knew good quality in this day and age, it's going to be a $10,000 job. So especially in Southern California. So I found this guy. He seemed like he was keen on doing it. It seemed great at that moment. He said, hey, it might need a core support. And I'm like, yeah, there's a chance, because I think it had gotten in a little like minor bump in the front. I knew going in that there was a chance they might have to do a new core support. He agreed to take on the job. The quote came back a little bit higher than I wanted. I think that his quote was around 14,000, bit more than I wanted to spend, but I knew, hey, this guy's going to take good care. Everything was going well. I brought the car in. The painter was very good at communication. He was on it, on top of it. Everything seemed pretty good. He started painting the car and, the core support issue came up and he's like, hey, this is probably going to need a core support. I said, okay, let me get one. So Steve at HMO had one. Good deals, like a couple $100. Bought that one, gave that to the paint shop, and he did the install. And there was an upcharge to that. I knew going in there was probably going to be an upcharge if it needed a core support, and unfortunately it did. So price comes up a little bit. Not anybody's fault. Also, one of the fenders was aftermarket, and I said, well, I gave him like 4 fenders. I'm like, maybe you could just test fit, choose the best one. And he's like, okay, I found the best one. It's not in the best shape, but I can clean it up and I can do some adjustments and some trimming, and I think I can get it to fit really well. Upcharge for that. Okay, it is what it is. There again, still really good communication. The guy seemed honest and, pricey in reality. So things started to fall behind and more issues started to come up. The front bumper was aftermarket. I knew I wanted an OE one, but I was like, you know what? If it fits perfect, then it doesn't really matter. But it ended up fitting pretty poor. So I quickly got him a new bumper. That new bumper, unfortunately, had a couple layers of paint. It was a couple $100, which was a really good deal. It had tons of paint on it. That was an $1,100 upcharge. I was like, oh my goodness, this is getting out of control. $1,100 to strip a bumper. There wasn't any damage on the bumper. It was just some excess paint. I thought that was pretty crazy, but I was like, well, I'm in this hole already. I ended up finding another bumper, brand new bumper. It was way cheaper. My buddy gave me a great deal. My buddy Matt came in clutch and he's like, I'm going to give you this bumper. It was like $450. It's like, well, now I got 2. So you know what? Just paint 2. So that was another upcharge. All of a sudden I was like, wow, this is a lot of money, but I understand that he's doing a lot of work. So my bill ended up coming in about 19 grand, which was almost double what I originally wanted to spend. He started to fall behind on the paint job. We had an agreed date and it was a 4-month total for the job. I told him this is a SEMA build. I'm doing 2 cars, so I need the time scheduling to be spot on. He cannot go over that 4-month deadline. He ended up having more issues and there was problems with the booth. The motor's broken, the this and that's dirty and busted. And he's like, don't worry. I have this other booth. And I'm like, okay. He's like, the big booth. Doesn't matter to me. I don't care what booth you use as long as it's a clean job. Oh yeah, I'm going to clean it. I'm going to do all these things. He spent a lot of time cleaning the booth. He painted the car and he was a little bit late and very, 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 very dirty. The whole job was borderline terrible. And he knew it. He's like, listen, you're not going to like the car. I'm probably going to have to redo it. I'm like, okay, how soon can you redo it? He says, I'm going to do it as fast as I can. I'm like, time is ticking away. We need this done immediately. I don't know, like if he took on other jobs or whatever. I'm not really sure about that, but I know that I didn't get the second paint job done for another 3 months. So now we're 7 months deep and I only have literally 2 months to build this car because I have another car that I'm going to have to put together in another 2 months. That became really difficult for me because I was always thinking about with the time. For me, you have to understand, I'm building an electric kit for this Civic and it's supposed to be released at SEMA. I have to look good with my Toyo Tires booth that this car is going in. I have to make sure that the paint's perfect, but for both to get mutual return on the investment, my car's got to look good, bring in the traffic for Toyo Tires. However, it's got to look good, but I got to sell this kit. This kit is going to be the thing that I'm not going to say I'm going to sell a lot of these, but this is a kit that I'm trying to bring to the public. So all eyes will be on it and it's got to give good return and it's got to be at SEMA. That's the whole point of building the car. So even if the paint was at 90%, it's not a deal breaker. I need the car to go to SEMA. I am spending a lot and investing a lot in this car. So I ended up picking the car up and I really didn't want to because it looked really bad. It's the worst paint job, I'm going to be truthful, that I've ever seen. I've never seen a paint job straight out of the booth that has been this dirty with peaks and valleys, super rough. There's areas that have tons of kind of back overspray, rough areas, dull areas. I don't want to get too much into depth with it, but I do want to say I brought the car to a shop called Ulysses Painting and Restoring. That's going to be the last time that I'm going to even have to say that name. I just want you guys to know what I'm talking about, who I'm talking about. And I'm just really trying to tell you guys about the experience that I've had with this car and not necessarily, I'm not trying to drag anybody's name through the mud, but I want you guys to understand where I'm at with the build. The second paint job, there was a bit of spot repair, I guess you could say. So it wasn't like the exterior was completely painted. I was under the impression that it was, but there was tape lines along the body that my paint correction guy discovered. And he's like, there's no way that this was all painted at once. Even then, he didn't paint the whole car, which he said he was supposed to. And there's lines on it that are pretty clear because my paint correction guy could have easily burned through those lines and that would have been a disaster if he burned through the clear. There's a lot of issues at pickup and we don't really got to get into that, but there was words exchanged and I didn't feel like it was a fair presentation and I just felt that there was a lot of misses there. So I really felt like the guy's communication was great. It was like the last 10% that just fell apart. It's like, why did I even pick it up if it's so bad? And I kind of went into that the reason for the build is for it to go to SEMA and to show off the electric conversion that I spent the last 2 years designing. In my mind, it has to be there at all costs. First thing I did when I got it back was I called my paint correction guy. I said, Mitchell, you got to try to bail me out of this one. So he comes down, he goes, man, it's soft, man. It's so soft. He's like, let me do a little test area. He did some test areas. He's like, you got to bake this thing. And I'm like, it was painted weeks ago at this point. And he's like, yeah, but it's still really, really soft. I'm like, okay. So he's like, all you could really do is either try to rent a booth with a heater or let it bake outside. I'm like, it's 80 degrees out here. It should be able to bake pretty quick. Car's white, doesn't get super hot, but I started posting about that. I got a little irritated at the whole situation. So I'm like, hey, I got this car back and now I can't even put it together. I'm just gonna have to look at it and literally wait for paint to dry. With that being said, I'm sitting outside. I'm trying to work on the car in the sun. It was bad. Not having a good one. Every now and then I'd post wow, I wish that this paint would dry, etc., etc. People were hitting me up. They're like, dude, if that paint hasn't dried yet, you got to just cut your losses. You got to just redo the car. And this was scary because 10 people that were professional body guys were messaging me on social being, this isn't going to work. You need to just cut your losses. You need to go to another shop. And I'm thinking in my head, how could I ever, if I go up, give this to another shop, it's going to be another $10,000. This is an EG for crying out loud. Yeah, this is my canvas and this is the car that I choose to invest into. And it doesn't matter what kind of car it is. It's still a car and it deserves top quality jobs, especially if it's under my watch. I just couldn't really chew another 10 grand to have the car painted, and then I would still miss SEMA. The fact of the matter is that it wouldn't get to the show, and that's the whole point. I called back my paint correction guy. I'm like, hey, it's been baking for X amount of days. Let's try to do it. So he started going through it, and he's like, man, this is really hard to work with. It is so soft. I feel like I'm just gonna push the clear right off the thing. And he's like, you got to just let it bake more. And I'm just like, oh my God, how can I let it bake more? Like it's already been 7 days of it sitting outside, and all these guys are telling me all these horror stories on IG. So basically he's like, dude, I'm going to help you out, and I'm going to try to correct this car at a fixed cost. He's like, it's starting to dry a little bit, but he's like, it's still pain in the ass to work with. It's like polishing rubber, and it's like sanding rubber. It's like, it's very, very difficult to work with. So I was like, okay, well, please bail me out of this one. And he's like, I got you. He's like, this might be a 70, 80-hour job. And I'm like, dude, how in the world can that be an 80-hour job? I got back with the painter, and the painter's like, oh, you shouldn't have to spend more than $1,000 to sand and color buff that car. And I'm like, okay, but why am I getting quotes? Because I asked 2 people, $5,000 to $7,000 to fix your doings. And he's like, nope, that you're way off. And I'm like, okay, so that means that you value your time, but you don't value somebody else's time, clearly, because that's all that could mean. And I'm like, that's not fair. I'm willing to pay for people's work. If I'm seeing them work, kill themselves for 50 to 80 hours, like, I'm not just going to be like, just do it for me, man. Come on. No, we figured out a price. Mitchel's price was super reasonable at $5,000. And so far he has almost 70 hours into this car, and he still hasn't done his final polishing and ceramic coating. The bumpers are still not done yet. So he still has 15 hours worth of work to do. And I'm watching him work, and I'm trying to help him, and he's sanding and polishing and sanding again. And this paint's very weird because it has all these low points and it has high points. It's easy to sand a high point. There's a lot of clear on this car, which is, thank goodness there is. But if you kind of think about it like a volcano, you got this low point in the center. And if you're sanding, you're trying to get to that low point, but you're taking off a lot of clear coat, and you're still left with a little bit of a low point. That sucks, because you could have, he was measuring the paint. He has a really high-end tool. You can measure the clear, and the clear's measuring like 2,000ths of a millimeter. Sorry, I don't remember like the exact amount, but he was like, Ferrari paint job's like 1.4, and then and they have really bad paint job apparently. The paint's not that good, and then a really good one is like with a ton of clear is like around 2. It was measuring around 2 in most areas, but there was some valleys and stuff like that. So we're talking like 1.1 to 2 is what it was measuring in, like the thousandths of the millimeter, I think it was. So he's able to sand, and he's doing a really good job and being very, very careful. And in some areas he really thinned out the clear. But we had to, because we have these like volcanoes where it's deeper than it is high. That was super problematic. So this has been like 5 weeks now of letting it sit outside, and and me being able to try to do some suspension and stuff, and then I'll get it back out in the sun. And I've been just letting it cook and bake, and I've been working on the car nonstop for like 6 months. I've been working on the EVs. Like, I have been doing these two cars for like nonstop every day for 6 months. I'm not going to events, nothing. I'm just working. That's kind of where I'm at with the car. I wanted to let you guys know with transparency who did it, where I'm at with it, and really what it takes to make this car now looks super presentable. Like, it's almost like glass now. And honestly, I owe all that to Mitchel. Mitchel is an amazing, I'll give his like info in the comments or whatever, and I'll give you guys, his business. And he's a privateer guy. He's amazing, does amazing work. Real quick, I just want to break it down. So how I got to the position where I'm at is a couple $1,000s for PDR. I thought that was a good idea going in. I still think it was a decent idea in the end. Everything all said and done with core support, over things, doubling my budget, etc. That was around $19,000. And then you got another $5,000 worth of probably 4 of it, if you want to do percentage wise, 4,000 of it, or maybe even 5, depending on how much you value your hourly, is in correcting the poor quality paint. Still yet to come, it needs more polishing and ceramic coating. It's a tough place to be in. It's, I really would have loved to be into it. $10,000, maybe like 1,000 on PDR, and then maybe another $1,000 for the ceramic coating. That's where I wanted to be. That was my sweet spot. And to think back and be like, man, it's double what I thought it was. It's crazy to think. I really want you guys to understand that, like, that's where I'm at with it. This car is not just an EG. It's not just an old Civic. It's actually like, it's an important car to me, and I'm investing a lot of time. So why shouldn't I invest in the paint? I want it to be the best presentation that I can bring you, especially it being a SEMA vehicle where a lot of eyes are on it. I'm a SEMA judge. I can't bring bullshit to the show. I just can't. It's got to be top notch. It's got to be the best I could possibly do. And I just want you guys to know that, like, paint shops, like, you need to choose wisely. Recommendations are good. I had good recommendations. People even said that they had good experiences with them. I didn't, but I just want to tell you guys, like, there's hidden fees and there's things you got to really be aware of. So try not to put yourself in this situation. There again, this video is not to bash any individual or shop. It's just to give you where I'm at with a full disclosure kind of a mindset. So thank you for listening. Thank you for staying this whole time with me rambling on. Have a good day.